Episode 3.1 of benDy Tubes coming at you. I'm Derek. Let's fork glide into this next session of mid-school Flatland BMX. Now I realize my shout outs are a little bit long. I'm gonna tighten them up a bit. So quick shout out to 4 Pegs BMX. Attila over there at 4 Pegs does an amazing job curating bike frames and components from all over the world. The game changer I've got over my shoulder here from 4 Pegs, my OG bars from 4 Pegs. Check them out, 4pegsbmx.com. Now this next section of benDy Tubes is gonna be about the big dogs in mid-school Flatland BMX. And I'm just gonna jump right in with GT bicycles. Now they've been around for a while and a lot of their bikes have a decades-long pedigree. I'm talking about the GT Performer, the GT Performer Pro. In 1998, where we're at on the timeline, they also dropped a bike called the Vertigo that you could get. It was their entry-level freestyle BMX bike. But they also had other bikes for ramps and park and stuff like that, like the Tour that Rob Nolly and Dave Volker rode. But you all know I'm dancing around the bike, and I'm talking about the bike, none other than the GT Show. This thing is an absolute icon in the Flatland industry. So in the last few episodes, I kind of skimmed and summarized and grouped a lot of bikes from different companies all together, but I just want to dive into the GT Show, and that's why I'm excited about this next section. Moving into the big dogs gives me an opportunity to dig into the design and the language and more about the bike and the company at that time and what they contributed to mid-school Flatland. GT Show specs and dims. 18.4 top tube, 75-degree head tube angle, 13.25 chainstay. Wheelbase was about 32.6. So this thing was small. It was very compact. It's not as compact as, say, the Morales, but it was small for the time. Another iconic thing about this bike is that it was freaking aluminum. Now, we just talked about the Hawk FFL, which I think came out around 97, being the first aluminum flatland bike. GT Show 1998, next aluminum flatland bike. Big difference, round tubes, and 6061 T6 heat-treated aluminum. And I mean, look at this thing, it's beautiful. That top tube is bent and sloped and kind of ovid. They flattened it out a little bit. So it almost makes like a platform, like maybe a platform? I don't know. And then if you look at the front end and around the bottom bracket, they've got some huge gussets to support it where the strength was absolutely needed. A couple other exciting things about this bike, that CNC brake bridge was an absolute masterpiece in machine and mill work. And some of the crazier details, the bottom bracket was it was knurled just like a peg, so gave you a little bit of extra traction whenever you're doing some bottom bracket upside down wheelie type tricks. Another thing that the GT Show had was pacman dropouts. Now, I don't know if this was the first frame to have pacman dropouts, but they were designed to prevent you from bending your axle. So with the Flatland geometry and with the pacman dropouts and the knurled bottom bracket and just that short stack height, this thing was revolutionary. It was absolutely beautiful and amazing. People like Gabe Weed and Ruben Castillo rode it, and I think there was even a custom stretched out version made for Trevor Meyer. So the crazier thing was that this was a complete bike. A lot of the bikes at this time in the late 90s were sold as completes, Flatland complete bikes. There were frames out there, but we're gonna talk more about that a little bit later. But this was a complete. It was just top of the line. We're talking shorter stem, lower offset forks, free coaster off the shelf, aluminum pegs, those beautiful bars, high PSI tires, 34 tooth fly cutter sprocket, and those absolutely beautiful forged 7075 aluminum 165 millimeter 3-piece cranks. This thing was top shelf, top of the line, no expenses spared to make this the Flatland bike of the time. One of the other things I love about this bike is the wheel set. The front wheel was radial lace, GT Mohawk hub to just a standard double wall rim. But on the back, they did something kind of tricky. They did a radial lace on the non-drive side because it's not realizing the moment of torque. And they did a cross lace on the drive side. So if you ever see one, check it out. It's a cool little detail that they did to really make sure that the wheels could handle the loads and stresses put on from the drivetrain, as opposed to going all four sides being radial lace. So neat little detail there. And so with all that, this bike came in around 29 pounds, which is super light. I'm gonna talk about several other Flatland bikes that were completes at the time. None of them were tipping the scales at 29 pounds. So the GT Show was not a one-hit wonder by any means. They had the ball burnished in 1998. They went to a blue frame in 1999, and then they made that absolutely beautiful gold flake green metallic 2000 version that just knocked the socks off of anybody that saw it. And in fact, in 2001, they released it as a frame only, which is pretty rare. Like I have yet to see one built up out and about, and haven't really found many references on BMX Museum, but it was there, 2001 frame and pacman dropout only frame kit. So from year to year, the bikes progressed a little bit. The frame geometry stayed about the same, but from 98 to 99, they replaced the ACS Trues with the GT airbags. From 99 to 2000, components went black, new seat and seat post, loved that seat, great seat. Handlebars were 7/8 diameter, they went up to 1-inch diameter. And on top of that, I don't know if you noticed the rims, they went from a standard double wall rim to a little bit deeper dish double wall rim. I don't know if anybody remembers the triple wall Alex rims back in the day. Remember those? But you know, small changes, small tweaks to an absolute icon of a bike. I actually had one on layaway in St. Louis, Missouri. I think it was the 99 version. I had $100 in a dream, but that was about it. And that thing stayed on layaway probably for 90 days and then got sold to somebody else. So kind of sad. I absolutely love this bike. It is beautiful. It's a dream bike. I think about one every single day. And there's a group dedicated on Facebook that I'll link in the description that is, really focused on pacman dropouts. So they talk about GT shows and dyno slammers and anything with pacman dropouts. These pop up for sale from time to time. One's on there every couple months, it seems like. I think there's a 98 available right now, actually. But if you want one, they're available. Another thing that makes these hard to find is that we all know aluminum isn't indestructible. So a lot of these bikes suffered fractures and damage enough to where they weren't rideable. So let's take a moment, pay a moment of respect to all those GT shows that were well ridden and well loved. In the arms of the angel. Another thing I loved were catalogs. Going up to the local shop and getting a catalog for the next year of bikes was so much fun. And the 98 catalog did not disappoint. There's a guy called Peter Harvey. He pulled some stuff from BMX Museum, digitized it. So in the description below, I've got catalogs linked for 98, 99, 2000, so you can check these out in their natural habitat and just learn a little bit more about GT shows and the whole GT bicycle lineup, which was much more broad than just the Flatland bikes and the dirt and the street. They were huge into racing too, so check it out below on issue.com. Sidebar over. So the frame kit that I mentioned in 2001 was really the end of an era, but it wasn't the end of GT. In 1998, GT was sold to Quester. That company went bankrupt in 2001 and got sold over to Pacific Cycles. Currently, GT and Dyno are still exist, but under Pond Holdings. And they're with other brands like Schwinn and Cannondale and Mongoose that, like I said, still exist, but it's a new era of ownership. And so, there are legendary bikes still out there. You can get current versions of the Performer. And there's been a huge swing towards vintage, old school type bikes that we'll be talking about a little bit later. Now, circling back to what I said about the end of an era, when that 2001 frame kit was released, that was really the last of the USA-made GT bicycle product line. And I mention that because the GT show was almost wholly vertically integrated in its component package. Handlebars, stem, cranks, frames, seat posts, like all of this stuff, with exception to some of the brake hardware and chains, were manufactured by GT, and they loved this bike. They put inspiration and magic and meticulous details and planning into this bike for years. And to transfer it over to an organization that was more budget friendly, the magic didn't translate that originally inspired the GT show. And I mean, that's okay. But the reality was, like, this production likely went offshore, and there's nothing wrong with offshore manufacturing. Taiwan and China make more bikes that serve the world than any other countries. You know, I'm looking at FEC, like, you all are amazing. Titanium bars right here, love them, thank you. But whenever you talk budget bikes, like that's gonna change the equation. And what changed was you got a 2002 GT show that just wasn't the same. It looks like it's aluminum to check that box, but there's no Pac-Man dropouts, there's a couple bins, there's a platform, but it's just not the same. There's an example that I'm showing on BMX Museum over here, not over here. And you can see, like, it's just, the vibe was lost. And so that's what I mean, the end of an era. Like, it wasn't bad, it's just change. And, you know, GT went from this iconic USA owned, California made brand into, you know, just a kind of big box store bicycle brand. And that's the reality of it. So the GT show wasn't the only bike to carry over from that 2001 to 2002 transition. Bikes like the Dyno Air became the GT Air, the Comp, the Performer, they carried on. But they became more budget than bad. And that's just the nature of going into that kind of manufacturing and the lower margins that were expected from those budget bicycles. And honestly, you know, Flatland suffered a pretty big hit. In 2003, the X Games stopped carrying Flatland because it wasn't extreme enough. And so, you know, I think that really crystallized the players and distilled down the riders and the companies. And so it kind of went from big dogs in 2003 more into the more boutique and betwixt frames that I'm going to talk about in subsequent episodes. So GT kept making bikes, and they actually brought Flatland frames back into the mix. In 2005, the Encore, pictured here, which definitely got a better stab at that design language on the GT show. Now, we didn't get these in the US, and I know the US isn't the only country to get bicycles, but I was kind of bummed. Like, these look like pretty legit Flatland frames and bikes. It would have been fun to try one out, but we never got them. Now, as time went on, there are several examples of comps and performers that kept coming and going, and straight tubes and a bend here. In 2008, the Finale made a return in what looks like a pretty legit Flatland frame pictured here. Same for the 2009 Encore and Finale. Coming back to the stage. And in 2011, GT switched up the Finale look, and you get this, which is more Quaman-esque with that gusset up front. This bike looks awesome. This is good. I don't know if this is a complete, I don't know if those 4-piece bars or those knee saver bars are standard on that bike, but this thing looks good. It looks legit. So that's 2011. That's the Finale. And that's the last that I can find that GT was contributing to mid-school Flatland. So 2011 GT Finale, we end with you. The 1998 GT show started things, and this is where it went. I also want to call out that GT did a phenomenal job naming their bikes. I mean, the Performer, the Show, the Finale, the Encore, like, way to keep it in that genre-radical range and keeping them all pretty similar. Well done. So I'm going to stop there. That is GT bicycles. I really wanted to cover the show in depth. I hope I expanded more of your understanding of GT, the show, and how it went on after 2001, whenever that frame kit dropped. And so we're going to stick with the big dogs of BMX, and I'm going to grab the next episode for GT's little brother, Dyno. So be sure to join back in with me, Derek, benDy Tubes, episode 3.2 coming at you.